Less than a month ago, I received an email from a former client sharing his recent job search experience along with some data. He ended his email with this: I know this is anecdotal data, but didn't know if it helps you at all. Happy to answer any questions about it. I only had one question for him. Would you be willing to share your experiences on the podcast? And he graciously said yes. Today, you will meet a former client of mine, Chris Bond, who will share what he learned from his recent job search in hopes it will help you put some things in perspective about this job market based on his experiences. This is an eye-opening conversation. Let's get started. Hello, my friends. This is the Mid-Career GPS podcast, and I'm your host, John Nerrell. I help mid-career professionals like you find a career they love or love the one they have using my proven four-step formula. There are things we can do right or wrong in any job search. And if you're frustrated that you aren't getting the results you want, I want you to get my free guide and video training, Why Your Mid-Career Job Search Isn't Working and What to Do About It. In this guide and training, you will learn some of the biggest mistakes mid-career professionals are doing in this job market and how it's not getting them the results that they want. This is a chance to course correct. And if you're ready, all you have to do is visit my website, johnnerrell.com/resources, or check the show notes for more information. Now, on to this week's interview. Chris Bond is a success-driven visionary and operations executive with unique experience enhancing community relations for nonprofits and academic programs that result in positive organization visibility and reputation. You see, Chris knows how to navigate complex executive team challenges. He does that by influencing stakeholders across multiple functions and divisions, improving accountability, integrity, and participation as a transparent and relatable leader. Chris has proven experience evaluating grant resources and data trends to optimize operating and capital expenditures, raising over 6 figures in nonprofit funding. Having successfully navigated his recent job search, Chris is here to share his experiences to help you build your mid-career GPS and learn from what he discovered in this job market. It is my pleasure to introduce you to my client, a wonderful connection, and a friend, Chris Bond. Chris Bond, welcome to the podcast. It's great to see you again, my friend.
Thank you, John. It's great to see you again, and appreciate you having me on.
Yeah. So, Chris, I shared a little bit of this in the interview that a while back you reached out to me in an email and shared some very personal data related to your job search. And it's why I am so grateful you decided to come on the podcast and accept the invitation today, because what you've gone through is what I am seeing across so many mid-career professionals right now, so many of my clients who are going through this, that while this job market is difficult, it is not impossible, right?
No,
Would you agree?
I would agree. It can be frustrating, certainly for anyone looking for a job in this market or any market. But you just have to be resilient. I mean, you don't even have a choice about it. If you want to land a job, you just have to stay at it and be as enthusiastic on day 120 as you were on day 2. So my story is not unique. I'm sure many of your listeners can relate, even if not now, at some point in their lives, or unfortunately, maybe they'll be looking at this situation soon, given cuts in various places. So I'm happy to share my experience with anyone. Again, I don't think I'm special or unique. I just did what I had to do that anyone else would have to do.
So, Chris, let's go through some of the data. Let's go through the timeline. So you found yourself actively looking for a job in mid-February of 2025.
Correct. Yes.
When did you end up accepting your new position?
It was about on or about August 10th of this year. Um, and interestingly enough, it was a job that I had initially applied for back in March of 2025. So one of the first jobs I applied for was one that I actually ended up accepting, but because of the lengthy job process, it took 5 months from first application to job acceptance.
Okay, so to clarify then, so you applied for this job back in March. You didn't reapply. It's just their timeline took a while to
Correct.
actually move you through their pipeline.
Correct. And I didn't know for most of that time period, so I continued to apply for other jobs. Um, it's a government job, so
Mhm.
most people can understand that it is not a fast process. The wheels of any government, local, state, federal, don't move very quickly. So this is a job with a bureau within the state Department of Agriculture in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
It took a while.
Yeah. So right away, it definitely confirms what we're seeing in a lot of the research that on average for mid-career professionals, we're talking around 5 to 6 months to
Mhm.
find that new job. But Chris, what I want to highlight here is that in this time period of you applying for positions, you were very aggressive in terms of your application strategy. So in total, how many jobs did you apply for this year?
I applied to 125 jobs between the middle of February and the middle of June.
Okay. Out of those 125, how many responses did you get?
Not counting the rote response of we've received your application, responses that were either personalized, like we want to move you ahead in the process, or more commonly, thank you for your application, but we've chosen another candidate to move ahead in this process. I heard back from 62 of those 125.
So I want to stay with you on this for a minute because when we worked together previously, we
Mhm.
talked about response rates.
Yep.
And we talked about that the goal was to get that personalized response. And I remember when we were working together, I shared with you if you could get a 25% response rate, you were
Mhm.
doing incredibly well. So you're now telling us in this round, you were able to get a basically 50% response rate. Chris, what were the things that you did to elicit such a high response rate from your applications?
Sure. I don't know how much of this can be attributed to luck, but I was, I'll say I was pretty specific in what I was looking for, but I have a very niche role. So um, that probably limits some of the competition. In other words, a lot of the jobs I applied for, maybe they didn't get inundated with 2,000 applications. Um, Another thing, having worked with you previously and having my resume optimized for the AI that's going to review it first in more cases than not, hopefully that also led to some of my success. Also, following up with a lot of these organizations. If I didn't hear anything back within 2 or 3 weeks, I would typically send a follow-up email, just say, I'm still interested in this role. Can you let me know if I'm still a candidate? I'm very much interested. So a combination of a good resume to begin with that's yeah faces the reality that you're going to probably be weeded out first, by not a human. Um, Applying specifically for those roles that I believe I was a good candidate for,
Mhm.
rather than taking a shotgun approach and whatever hits. Um, and also just following up. Because I was out of work, my job was to find a job. So I had to take it seriously, devote time every day to the search. Out of 125 that I applied for, without exaggerating, I'm sure I had to read over 1,000 job descriptions to find ones that I thought I could be a fit for. Um, so I attribute some of that higher response to that type of follow up and the having a good product to begin with to offer to folks
Mhm.
that hopefully would be a good fit.
So, Chris, what I'm taking away here is that one, you were crystal clear on the type of positions you believed you were a great fit for. And
Correct.
so, because of that, you were able to pinpoint exactly the types of organizations, departments, and agencies that you were going to look for jobs in and apply for.
Correct. And I realize not everyone has that luxury. So, I did not have to take the first job I could find. And that is a privilege. I know that.
Mhm.
Um, so my experience may not be the same as everybody's. I don't want to suggest that, I'm sitting here high on the hog and, I can take my time and being picky and choosy in what I want. Um, but fortunately, I have a partner who was employed, and I had a bit of savings. I could take my time and do it right, even
Sure.
though I wanted to get back to work as soon as I could. So, and I realize that that is not a position that everybody can take.
Well, and I thank you for sharing that. I also want to acknowledge, though, that when anyone in any situation goes from a two-income household down to
Mhm.
a one-income household, there are sacrifices that have to be made, right? It's not
Absolutely.
easy in that regard.
It, no, no, there were certainly sacrifices and belt tightening.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that my partner has a good income, you're right. We're set up for a two
Yeah.
income lifestyle.
But to your point, when someone like you is in this process and they're searching for jobs, one of the things that we talked about too regarding fit was you have to have your non-negotiables, right? So non-negotiables could be everything from the kind of work,
Hmm.
where you want to work, but also, look, I can't take a 50% pay cut here. That's just not going to be worth my time, effort, and energy to applying for, especially given your background and expertise. So
Correct.
that clarity, that's what I want to pull out here is having that kind of clarity in terms of exactly what you were wanting to look for was integral in the success of your job search.
Correct. I could not take a 50% pay cut. I mean, I would be wasting my time and their time if I were to be focusing on those types of jobs. I didn't expect that I'd be able to necessarily replace the income of my previous job. I was hoping to. Fortunately, I came very close with the role I did accept. Um, but yeah, it didn't make sense for me to devote my time to find something that was going to just put me right back in the same position. Because if I had accepted a role that paid half of what I was making, I would still be looking for another job
Sure.
to eventually replace that. So,
Yeah.
in the interest of my time and potential employers' times, I did not focus on those jobs.
Okay. Right. So you have the career clarity. You have a resume that you feel confident in submitting that you believed was set up to get you through that initial screen with the applicant tracking system.
Correct.
And then you go ahead and you follow up. And I'd love to know from you, Chris, like where did you where did you find the confidence to follow up regarding that position when for so many people they have a thought of I don't want to be a pest, I don't want to be a bother, I don't want to upset the hiring manager. How did you find a way to confidently and competently follow up with prospective employers?
I mean, there certainly was some of that self-doubt. I you know, had the same dialogue with myself. I don't want to seem too pushy, too pesky, and have that be the reason that I'm taken off of the consideration list. But at the end of the day, if I don't advocate for myself, they're not going to. You know, so that was part of the impetus. Also, just you know, respecting my own time. That there's no point in me devoting emotional energy and getting my hopes up on a particular job if, in fact, they have moved on to another candidate. So it was as much about respecting, again, my time as theirs and realizing that I am a potential candidate. I am qualified enough to have applied for that job. So, I deserve to know whether I'm in consideration still for the role.
Absolutely. So, Chris, let's go back and take a look at your stats, right? So you applied for 125 jobs, you get about a 50% personalized response rate. And then out of those 125 jobs you applied to, how many of them did you get invited to for an interview?
12.
Okay, so 10% essentially.
Yep.
All right, which
10%.
again is a incredible response rate. Okay. That speaks volumes to how targeted you were in that. Just to take a step back, for people who are listening, it sounds like we are talking solely about you applying for positions online. Did you do any type of networking or outreach to your network in terms of having them perhaps advocate or suggest for you for a position within their organization?
I did. I did reach out to a couple of folks who either I had previously worked for, um, or ones I had worked with in previous roles, just letting them know that this was the situation. Maybe they knew of an opening somewhere. Maybe they had a role themselves that I could fill even in the interim. Um, it turned out that the job I ended up accepting was not one that was the result of networking, but I did, in fact, rely on some folks to either let me know if they knew anything. And again, in the world I'm in, a lot of it is dependent on federal funding, which, of course, in this climate is not abundant.
Right.
Um, so it turned out that the individuals I'd reached out to, they were either they didn't have an opening available or they too knew a lot of folks in the same situation I was. But I still would recommend that people lean on their network. Even if it doesn't bear fruit this time around, it keeps you in mind for maybe future opportunities. Um, but yes, the majority of my applications, probably 96% of them, were the result of just scrolling through open positions. And to that point as well, everyone, everyone's experience is not going to be the same as mine. I did not look at LinkedIn, only because every time I saw a job that I might have been suitable for, it says, how many people have already applied for it. So I did not include LinkedIn in my job search. I certainly read through job descriptions that popped up, but um,
Where did
my
you search?
so my two most fruitful places were Idealist
Hmm.
and governmentjobs.com, where you can hone in on, state, county, town. You can isolate, you know, pay levels, whether it's remote work, whether it's in-person work. So I found most of my luck between those two sites, between Idealist and the government jobs. But again, that's because that's the area of focus. I work in either education or nonprofits.
Hmm.
So, but I did not find anything on LinkedIn to be helpful as far as job listings that I followed up on.
Yeah. And
In,
there's nothing wrong in that, Chris, right? I mean, you had to go where essentially the jobs were for you, and that's where you were able to maximize your time.
sure, I also used Indeed.
Okay.
But so probably the majority of those 125 I applied for were on Indeed.
Okay.
Um, the most success I found was with the ones on Idealist or government jobs.
Got it. Okay. Super helpful there. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right. So now you get to the interviews. All right. You go through 12 different organizations and
Mhm.
interviews and things like that. What can you share with the listeners about your interview experience that either either you found very helpful in terms of your preparation, or also what surprised you about interviewing in 2025?
Sure. I would say the majority of those 12 for the initial interviews were either phone screens, um, or Zoom calls. The ones I went ahead beyond the initial 12 were the ones that I did in person. So I don't know if that is just a function of it's still in 2025 more important to have FaceTime one-on-one, real world connections, or that's just coincidentally the field I'm in that happened to work. So I applied for a lot of remote work, and even though I would get interviews for remote jobs, those didn't work out for whatever reason.
Okay.
The jobs where I was actually made offers were ones that I had gone to in person right off the bat. So that's my experience. That doesn't mean that's everybody's experience, of course. So it was surprising that the majority of jobs I applied for were indeed remote, but the ones that were of serious considerations were ones that were local, within 45 minutes drive of where I live. So that was kind of a surprise. I expected that in this climate, I would have more success with remote work, but of course, the difference being that when it's remote, you can get applicants from everywhere across the country. And when a job is in person, unless someone is going to relocate, then the pool of eligible candidates is probably smaller than for a remote job.
Got it. When you were going through your final round interviews
Hmm.
for several positions you were applying for and ultimately the position you landed, was there a point during the interview when you felt like you either were going to get the job offer or you felt like this was a great fit? I would be thrilled if they made me an offer.
Sure. And I should have mentioned to your question earlier about interview prep.
Mhm.
Um, I took every interview seriously. I tried to inquire ahead of time who would be there because typically it was a panel of people as opposed to a one-on-one. I would, do my appropriate level of Facebook stalking, so to speak. Try to look up these folks, look at their LinkedIn. If I could find any YouTube videos of maybe they were interviewed previously, I wanted to just get a sense of what people's particular expertise may be, how they seem to interact with other people if I had that information. So, having done my due diligence ahead of time going into an interview, um, that was beneficial. That helped me to be on a more kind of even footing, I felt, with the interviewing process. In the one in particular interview, I had visited the location ahead of time, not I did not let them know that I had done that. So I was uh, as a potential client just to get a sense for how they treated customers, how their organization looked, and I came with suggestions. So when I came to the interview, I had let them know that I had done that, and I focused on the positives primarily, and then I offered a few instances where my expertise would lend itself well for improvements. They were very impressed with that, and I would feel in that particular interview that um, from the moment we started talking, I felt like, without being arrogant, I nailed it. I have this job if I want it. And in fact, they were one of the ones that made me an offer. I didn't ultimately accept it.
Mhm.
Um, but without having done that preparation ahead of time, I don't think I would have had that level of confidence and had that um, level of conversation during the interview that
Mhm.
gave me that confidence. In another case, for the job I did accept, um, I was made to feel at ease with some of the introductions where I was congratulated for being one of three finalists out of a nationwide search. Um, and just the tone of questioning was not one of uh, I didn't feel like it was accusatory, like how could you do this or what would you do here? Or I shouldn't say accusatory, but more inquisitive.
Yeah.
Instead, it was looking at my previous experience and how we might leverage that in the role. So I was made to feel that I would have been a valued part of the team. So in those instances, I felt like I feel very comfortable that I'm going to get an offer or at least move ahead in this process. The ones where I didn't get that kind of vibe from the interviewer, I did not, in fact, move ahead with. Although I should say there were other jobs that I felt I interviewed well and we had a good rapport,
Okay.
they ultimately went for other candidates. So I'm not sure what the magic formula is, other than to come in prepared, uh, be ready for any type of question. So another aspect of interview prep is actually having mock interviews. And I found that very helpful with a previous job search you helped me with, John,
Mhm.
where you and I would go through the paces and you would ask me the types of questions that an interviewer might ask. And even though a lot of people know what those questions are ahead of time, it isn't until you actually kind of practice what your answers may be, so that you're better prepared. And this go around, my partner was very um, supportive and helped me playing that role of the interviewer. So I could not have had as successful a job search as I did without both the tools that you had provided me with previously and having a supportive partner who was almost as
Yeah.
invested as I was in, finding an appropriate job.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing all of that. And when you started your job search back in February of this
Mhm.
year, and you look back on it and you say, gosh, I had two job offers and I got to choose. I got to ultimately choose between two different job offers. Was that something you thought was a possibility at the start of your job search, or did that surprise you in some way that given this job market, you would be in a position to entertain two different offers and choose one?
I think at the outset, I didn't realize how long of a journey it was going to be. And I probably falsely thought that the first dozen jobs I applied for, well, why wouldn't they want me to come in? And why wouldn't I get my pick of the litter? Well, I quickly learned that, 12 jobs became 25 jobs, became 50 jobs, became 100 jobs that I applied for, and then more ultimately, and that I would not necessarily have my pick of the litter, that it was a very competitive job market. And especially when you have your expertise lay in a niche aspect of an industry, um, you would probably be lucky to get two job offers at once. So, whereas initially I probably thought I would have my choice, as the months dragged on, I did not foresee that happening. And it was just luck, coincidence that two jobs that I was made offers at roughly the same time
Mhm.
allowed me to have that luxury of choice.
Nice. Nice. So, Chris, you and I worked together pretty intensely in 22 and 23.
Yep.
We
Hmm.
touched base a little bit in 24. We touched base earlier this year when things kind of happened and stuff.
Yep.
What I'd love for you to share a little bit is when people consider going through career coaching,
Hmm.
um, you and I often talked, especially at the beginning, that this wasn't necessarily going to be a long-term thing, right? Career coaching kind of drops in, helps out at a specific moment, and then you kind of take away some things with it with career coaching that
Hmm.
you get to continue to use and develop and move forward with. What would you say was a big takeaway from our work together that ultimately helped you, not just in 22 and 23 when we were
Hmm.
working closely together, but even relying on some of the things that we talked about and you got coached on going through this job search?
So I felt more confident in this job search because we had worked together previously for my last job search. So even though it wasn't necessarily as fresh in mind as when we had last worked, there were several tools that I took away that allowed me to be more confident in this particular job search. One of which was reframing how I present myself, both um, on paper and in person. I found it very helpful when you taught me that it's very powerful to go in and with your opening statement be that I help, that it's I'm not going in saying I do this, I do this, I do this, but framing it as what value you bring to an organization, um, and just having I don't want to say concise, but you have to be pithy, having an introduction that is powerful. So if I go in and say that, oftentimes the interviewer will, tell me something about yourself. Well, instead of hemming and hawing about my background, I could go in with an opening statement and say, I hope organizations do this. And of course, I would tailor it based on the job I was applying for, making it relevant, whether it was depending on the aspect of the nonprofit or for-profit world it may have been. But to be able to be prepared, knowing ahead of time what I'm going to say, was very helpful. And that was not an approach that I would have had prior to working with you, to be so consistent and on point entering the interview phase. So the tools allowed me to be more confident entering an interview, which can be an intimidating scenario. I mean, you're automatically at the disadvantage. But knowing what to say ahead of time and knowing how you're going to present yourself does level that field a little bit.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome.
That whole work on the unique professional value statement was definitely such a game changer for you and for so many of my clients and things. But thank you again for just reiterating there's such power in when we communicate our value by simply saying I help.
Yes.
What I'm seeing so much right now, especially in this job market, is companies, and I have to I want to be careful in how I phrase this, but the reality is companies don't care a whole lot about you. They want to care what you're going to do for them, right? They want to know how you're going to help them, how your results are transferable or translatable into this new role. What's the successes you've had in a previous role that you can bring over here into this organization that's going to help move this organization forward because we choose to bring you on?
Sure.
Right. So oftentimes people get caught up in the, I'm a hard worker, I'm a great communicator. They expect all those things. Right. It sounded like you were really able to lean into your results specifically from that place of value and service to communicate how you're going to help them.
Yes, that working on that value statement with you previously and just having that in your toolbox to lead off with was, I believe, that led to some of my success in getting job offers.
Nice.
So,
good stuff. Well,
and
Chris,
go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I was going to say, and to your point about how they approach you, it's understandable if you are having work done at your house, you may be selecting from three different contractors. You don't care if they're hard workers, you would expect that. So you want to know what else they had done and what they can offer you. It's not a matter of necessarily a personality contest. So I guess just flipping the script a little bit, I can understand why when I go into an interview, they don't really care about me personally. They want to know how I can help their organization. So
yeah,
totally agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and exactly. I mean, there's so many ways they're assessing fit, just as you as the job candidate are assessing fit. And yeah, of course, you have to be a good person and nice person and play well with others and all those kind of things. But at the end of the day, they're looking for results, and that's how you get to deliver that. So, Chris, I am so thrilled and happy for you that you are going to be starting this new job by the time this episode drops.
Yeah.
As we go to wrap up, what advice would you give the listeners today who are currently job seeking or they are frustrated with their job search, that as they think about building their mid-career GPS to find whatever is next for them, what advice would you give them based on your most recent experiences to help them?
Patience in this particular market. And again, I realize that comes from a place of privilege because some people do have to take the first thing that's offered because they aren't able to float in the interim. But just realizing that there are a lot of people applying for the same roles that they may be patient, be persistent with your follow-ups, and that will likely increase the amount of interviews that you'll get, or at least the amount of follow-ups you'll get from the jobs that you had applied to. Again, I know that was my experience. It doesn't mean it's going to be everyone's experience, but I think there is value in realizing that you may have to settle in for this job search journey. It's not going to be fixed overnight. So if you go in with that mindset that this is going to take work, I have to stay at it, I have to make uncomfortable follow-up sometimes because your job and livelihood depends on it.
Yeah. Well, Chris, thank you so very much for sharing your story, your experiences, your insights with all of us today. Congratulations again on the new job and continued success and best wishes to you.
Thank you. It was my pleasure, John. I've appreciated working with you in the past and the tools you have helped me to hone. And I wish much success for all of your clients and all of your listeners in their job search.
Well, thank you so very much. All right, my friends. So, look, if there's one big takeaway from all of the wonderful things that Chris shared today, what I want to offer you is it's the career clarity. It's knowing the kind of positions you want, having a strategy in order to get there, being resilient in terms of why you are valuable to a new organization or a future organization. And when your brain kicks in and says, oh, I don't want to be a pest, I don't want to be a bother, how are you going to help them? Right? That's where the follow-up comes in. How are you going to help them? Let them tell you no. But in the meantime, if they haven't, there is still an opportunity for a yes that's there. And in this job market, where it is an employer's job market, Chris demonstrated so clearly the power of patience and resilience in your job search. So, Chris, thank you again. Everybody, remember this. Just like Chris, you're going to build your mid-career GPS 1 mile or 1 step at a time, and how you show up matters. Make it a great rest of your day. Thank you for listening to the Mid-Career GPS podcast. Make sure to follow on your favorite listening platform. And if you have a moment, I'd love to hear your comments on Apple Podcasts. Visit johnnerrell.com for more information about how I can help you build your mid-career GPS, or how I can help you and your organization with your next workshop or public speaking event. Don't forget to connect with me on LinkedIn and follow me on social at John Nerrell Coaching. I look forward to being back with you next week. Until then, take care, and remember, how we show up matters.